Yo, Adrian, I did it! Rocky, 1976, wasn't just another underdog boxing movie. It was a miracle born from desperation, chaos, and raw determination. What audiences saw on screen looked smooth and heroic, but behind the camera, everything nearly collapsed, from unpaid bills and broken cameras to a star who rode himself into the ring. This film wasn't polished Hollywood. It was guerrilla filmmaking. It was Sylvester Stallone gambling his entire life on one script. It was studio executives losing faith, actors clashing, and real punches flying on set. And today, we're pulling back the curtain to reveal 20 weird facts about Rocky, 1976. Secrets that show just how brutal, strange, and unpredictable its journey really was. Wait until you hear the bonus fact, the one detail that even die-hard fans have never imagined. Let's step into the ring and begin. Stallone wrote the script in just 3 days. Sylvester Stallone wasn't a household name when he wrote Rocky. He was a broke actor with only $106 to his name, barely affording food. Then, inspired by Muhammad Ali's fight against Chuck Wepner, a journeyman who shocked everyone by knocking Ali down, Stallone went home and wrote feverishly. In just 3 days, he finished the first draft of Rocky. But here's the twist. Studios wanted the script, not Stallone. They offered him up to $350,000, a fortune for someone with nothing. Yet Stallone refused unless he could star in the film. It wasn't ego, it was survival. "I knew if I sold it, I'd never forgive myself," he later said. That gamble nearly ruined him, but it also secured his place in history. Rocky wasn't just written quickly, it was written with hunger in every sense of the word. The dog in the movie was Stallone's real pet. Remember Butkus, Rocky's loyal mastiff? That wasn't a hired animal actor. That was Stallone's real-life dog. But here's the heartbreaking part. Before Rocky sold, Stallone was so broke he had to sell Butkus for $50 just to survive. Once the film deal came through, he tracked down the man he sold him to and begged to buy him back. The man refused, until Stallone paid $15,000. That's right. The struggling actor who couldn't afford rent spent part of his first paycheck on buying back his best friend. Butkus then appeared in Rocky and Rocky II, immortalized forever on screen. It wasn't just a prop dog. It was Stallone's real companion, woven into the fabric of the underdog story. In some ways, Butkus was the first real symbol of Rocky's resilience. The shoestring budget forced guerrilla filming. Rocky wasn't made with blockbuster money. United Artists gave Stallone a $1 million budget, which is tiny by Hollywood standards even then. To stretch it, the crew cut corners at every turn. Many of the Philadelphia street scenes weren't filmed with city permits. They shot guerrilla-style, quickly with handheld cameras, hoping no one stopped them. The famous scene where Rocky runs through the Italian market? Those were real vendors, not extras. In fact, one man even yelled at Stallone for bumping his fruit stand. Instead of cutting the footage, they left it in. It gave the film a raw authenticity. Stallone once admitted, "We couldn't afford extras, so we filmed real people living their real lives." What audiences thought was carefully choreographed was actually survival filmmaking. Not Hollywood magic, real Philadelphia grit. The fight scenes used real punches. Boxing movies often fake the punches. But in Rocky, many of the blows were painfully real. Stallone and Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed, agreed to stage the final fight with actual punches to make it look authentic. The result? Brutal injuries. Stallone's ribs were cracked. His nose was broken. Ironically, Rocky's most famous injury in the movie also happened in real life. At one point, Stallone ended up in intensive care after taking a hard shot to the chest that caused his heart to swell. He later admitted, "I thought I was going to die." What fans saw as an epic, choreographed fight was partly a real brawl, with actors literally risking their health. It wasn't just about looking real. It was about being real, no matter the cost. The ice rink scene was written out of necessity. The tender scene where Rocky takes Adrian ice skating looks deliberate, even poetic. But it wasn't planned that way. Originally, Stallone wrote it as a grand sequence in a packed skating rink with cheering crowds. The budget? Too small. They couldn't afford extras or even to rent out a rink properly. So Stallone improvised. He rewrote the scene to feature an empty rink, with just Rocky and Adrian on the ice. The result? A quiet, intimate moment that revealed Rocky's awkward charm and Adrian's shyness better than a crowd ever could. What seemed like brilliant direction was actually desperation. That limitation turned into cinematic gold. Not less, but more. Not failure, but intimacy. Sometimes the best movie magic comes from what you can't afford to do. Carl Weathers insulted Stallone at his audition. Carl Weathers wasn't a lock for Apollo Creed. At his audition, he read lines opposite Stallone and felt the energy was off. Frustrated, Weathers snapped, "This guy can't even act. I need a real actor to work with." The room went silent. The executives told him, "That's the writer." Weathers, embarrassed, backpedaled. But Stallone loved it. That arrogance, that larger-than-life bravado, was Apollo Creed. Weathers got the part precisely because he insulted the star. Stallone later admitted he knew instantly, that's Creed. What began as a tense audition misstep transformed into one of cinema's greatest rivalries turned friendships. It wasn't just casting, it was fate disguised as friction. The running montage was improvised on the streets. The montage of Rocky jogging through Philadelphia is iconic, but few know it was largely improvised. The crew followed Stallone in a van, filming wherever he ran. He dashed through streets, markets, even past random kids playing outside, none of whom were actors. That famous shot of Rocky running up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art? The crew only had one chance to capture it. No permits, no crowd control. The bystanders cheering were real locals who happened to be there. Stallone's sweat, his heavy breathing, the raw energy, it was all genuine. That moment became a cultural landmark, with tourists reenacting it for decades. Not a planned Hollywood set piece, a stolen, spontaneous moment that turned into living history. The camera work was revolutionary for its time. The smooth motion shots of Rocky running and fighting weren't typical for 1976. They came courtesy of the Steadycam, a brand new invention at the time. Inventor Garrett Brown, who lived in Philadelphia, had just developed the technology and offered it to the production. Stallone seized the chance, and Brown himself filmed Rocky's training runs. The Steadicam allowed fluid tracking shots without a dolly, giving Rocky a dynamic, documentary-like realism. Audiences had never seen boxing filmed like this. The technology later exploded in Hollywood, used in films like The Shining and Halloween. But Rocky was among the first to showcase its power. Not just a fight movie, a revolution in how movies could move. Talia Shire almost didn't play Adrian. Casting Adrian wasn't easy. The studio didn't think Talia Shire was right. She was too tied to her role in The Godfather. They wanted someone else, someone sexier. But Stallone fought for her. Shire brought a vulnerability and awkwardness that made Adrian believable. During her screen test, she whispered lines so softly that producers doubted her. But Stallone argued Adrian wasn't meant to be loud, she was meant to be broken. He insisted Shire stay. That gamble paid off when Shire earned an Academy Award nomination for her performance. What executives saw as weakness became the film's emotional anchor. Not glamorous, not bold, but real. And that's why audiences loved her. The studio wanted a different ending. In early drafts, Rocky was supposed to win the fight against Apollo Creed. The studio pushed for this, a triumphant knockout, a Hollywood ending. Stallone resisted. He argued that Rocky's story wasn't about victory, it was about dignity. Winning wasn't the point, going the distance was. Eventually, he convinced the producers, and the film ends with Rocky losing the match but gaining self-respect and love. That bittersweet finale gave the movie its legendary staying power. Stallone later said, if he won, it would have just been another boxing movie. By refusing the cliché, Stallone gave cinema an underdog ending that still makes audiences cheer and cry nearly 50 years later. Stallone's body took a brutal beating. Filming Rocky wasn't just exhausting, it was dangerous. Stallone insisted on realism in the boxing sequences, telling Carl Weathers, "Don't pull punches, hit me." The results were devastating. During one take, Weathers landed a body shot so hard that Stallone's ribs cracked. In another, Stallone absorbed a blow to the chest that left him hospitalized for several days with a swollen heart. He later joked, "I had to fight my way back from intensive care." What audiences saw as sweat and pain on screen wasn't acting. It was Stallone's real body breaking down. Rocky wasn't choreographed brutality. It was a film where the star risked permanent injury just to sell the illusion of authenticity. The meat locker scene was improvised. One of the most famous images of Rocky is him pummeling slabs of meat in Paulie's freezer. But that wasn't originally in the script. Stallone added it after visiting a meat packing plant for research. He noticed boxers training there, hitting sides of beef for resistance. He thought it looked gritty, raw, and real, so he slipped it into the film. The scene became iconic, to the point that real-life boxers, including Joe Frazier, later mimicked it in their training. Not only that, but butchers reported tourists showing up just to try it themselves. What started as a spontaneous idea became one of cinema's most unforgettable training images, not a gimmick. a cultural phenomenon born from improvisation. Joe Frazier's cameo was more than a cameo. Legendary heavyweight Joe Frazier appears briefly in Rocky as himself, walking into the ring before the main event. But this wasn't just fan service. Frazier was one of Stallone's inspirations for the character of Rocky. Known for his relentless fighting style and underdog beginnings, Frazier represented the grit Stallone wanted to capture. His cameo also gave the film authenticity. Boxing fans recognized him instantly, anchoring the movie in the real fight world. But behind the scenes, it was awkward. Frazier later claimed Stallone owed him money for using his life as inspiration. Their relationship soured for years. The cameo wasn't just a nod to boxing history, it was a reminder of how blurred the line between Rocky and reality really was. The original poster was a disaster. When Rocky premiered, the first promotional posters confused audiences. They showed Rocky and Adrian walking hand in hand, silhouetted against a plain background. But here's the odd part. Rocky is wearing shorts with the wrong color scheme, red with a white stripe instead of white with a red stripe. Fans later called it a bizarre error, almost like an alternate universe version of the character. Stallone laughed it off, but collectors today consider it a rare and valuable misprint. Not slick marketing, not flashy Hollywood design, just a rushed, low-budget mistake that accidentally created one of the strangest bits of Rocky memorabilia. The crew used family members as extras, with no budget for large crowds. The production team recruited anyone they could find, including their own families. Many of the faces in the boxing audience weren't paid extras, but relatives of the crew, sitting in the bleachers and pretending to cheer. To make the crowd look larger, director John G. Avildsen used clever camera angles and recycled the same handful of extras in different seats. In reality, the climactic fight was filmed with fewer than 50 people in the arena. The rest was smoke, mirrors, and editing magic. On screen, it looked like thousands roared for Rocky. In truth, it was a small, scrappy group of family and friends making noise. Not epic spectacle, just raw invention. The Philadelphia steps were almost cut. The most famous image in Rocky is him sprinting up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, arms raised in triumph. But shockingly, this moment was nearly cut. The studio argued it was pointless filler and didn't advance the story. Stallone fought hard to keep it, insisting it was the heart of Rocky's journey, an underdog's victory over himself. They compromised by filming it quickly with the new Steadycam, costing almost nothing. What seemed disposable became immortal. Those 72 steps turned into a global symbol of perseverance. Today, tourists from around the world reenact the scene daily. Imagine Rocky without that run. It would have lost its soul. Not filler, not fluff. The emotional climax of an entire film. Stallone's paycheck was shockingly small. Despite starring, writing, and carrying Rocky on his shoulders, Stallone didn't walk away rich. His upfront salary was a mere $23,000, less than what many supporting actors made in big films that same year. Most of the budget went into production costs. Stallone later admitted that even after the film's success, he was still struggling to pay bills until the sequels rolled in. Ironically, Rocky went on to make $225 million worldwide, but its creator initially saw very little of that. Not instant riches, not overnight success, just another uphill battle, proving that even when Rocky won, Stallone still had to fight in real life. The director and Stallone clashed constantly. John G. Avildsen, who later won an Academy Award for directing Rocky, often butted heads with Stallone. Stallone wanted raw realism, while Avildsen pushed for tighter pacing and cinematic polish. One heated argument erupted during the editing of the final fight. Avildsen wanted fewer cuts. Stallone demanded more close-ups of Rocky's battered face. Stallone eventually prevailed, and those bruised close-ups became unforgettable. Their clashes nearly derailed the film, but the creative tension also forged its unique identity. Not harmony, not easy collaboration, but friction that generated fire. Without those fights behind the camera, the fights on screen wouldn't have burned so brightly. Stallone had to sell his watch for rent. Before Rocky secured funding, Stallone's financial situation was dire. He had sold his dog, pawned his jewelry, and even hawked his watch just to keep a roof over his head. That watch, his last possession of value, was gone weeks before cameras rolled. Stallone later confessed, "I felt like I had nothing left but the story in my head." That desperation fueled his determination to star in his own script. Every frame of Rocky's struggle mirrored Stallone's own reality. The hunger in Rocky's eyes wasn't acting. It was Stallone's lived experience. He wasn't performing poverty, he was living it, frame by frame. Rocky was shot in just 28 days. Hollywood productions often stretch for months, but Rocky was filmed in a whirlwind. With only 28 days and a shoestring budget, the crew had to work relentlessly, shooting multiple scenes per day. There was no room for mistakes. If something went wrong, they rarely had time for another take. Stallone recalled that exhaustion was constant, but the pressure forced everyone to be inventive. That intensity gave the film its gritty energy, every frame brimming with urgency. Not leisurely filmmaking, not luxury, just a desperate sprint to the finish line. Ironically, the story of Rocky going the distance mirrored the crew's own race against time, art imitating life in the most literal way. Rocky's original ending was heartbreakingly different. The very first draft of Rocky ended not with triumph, not with Adrian and Rocky embracing, but with pure tragedy. Stallone originally wrote that after losing to Apollo, Rocky would walk away quietly from the ring, alone, his dream unfulfilled. No crowd, no Adrian, just silence. It was meant to be a grim reflection of failure. But during rewrites, Stallone realized this was too bleak. Instead, he crafted the final moment we all know, Rocky shouting for Adrian, the two of them clinging to each other. Victory found in love, not in boxing. That change transformed Rocky from a dark indie drama into an Oscar-winning phenomenon. Not despair, but hope. And that one rewrite changed cinema forever. In the end, Rocky wasn't just a boxing movie. It was the story of a man fighting poverty, rejection, and despair, both on screen and off. Stallone's gamble paid off, and his underdog tale reshaped Hollywood, inspiring generations. If this dive into the wild behind-the-scenes world of Rocky inspired you, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment about your favorite fact. Because just like Rocky proved, sometimes the biggest wins come from simply going the distance.